We're going to be discussing the interconnection of humanity and artificial intelligence, and what we're specifically doing at WGU around this topic, this conversation. My name is Hank Humphreys. I'm the Vice President of Product and Portfolio Management for Western Governors University. WGU is my first foray into higher ed. So the 23 years before I came to WGU, my background was really in enterprise software, working with a variety of companies from very large ones like IBM and Google to mid-sized like Dropbox to very small startups that you've never heard of and some don't even exist anymore. But I was kind of drawn into higher education when I found WGU and their tech-first approach to learning. And with me is Rajan Sheth. Rajan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm Rajan Sheth, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Chiron Learning. Very similarly to Hank, I've been in the tech industry for a very long time. I was at Google for about 17 years, leading a lot of the education products and enterprise products at Google, and then most recently led the AI team for Google Cloud. But really wanted to focus on education and the purpose of bringing education and educational opportunities to more people. And so left Google about 2 years ago to start Chiron Learning to figure out how can we use the combination of great educators and AI to expand learning opportunities for students.
Awesome. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to start by going through the WGU and Chiron stories. And I promise you this is not a sales pitch. I think it's important to understand the origins of both of our organizations so that we can properly set up the problem statement of what we're trying to solve. And then we're going to delve into what we're doing together and show you a sample of how we're leveraging the Chiron Learning platform to fuse human interaction with artificial intelligence to achieve our student outcomes. So if we look at WGU from an origin perspective, if we go back into the year 1995, this is a time when I like to characterize it as the consumerization of the internet. So the consumer internet really, for me, started to take hold early to mid-90s. So the internet obviously existed well before 95, but in 95 was the year in which people started getting internet connections en masse. And we started getting online. In fact, I remember vividly having a 14.4 baud modem that made all the chirps and tweets. I see a few heads nodding. I had my AOL account. By a show of hands, who had an AOL account? You old. Yeah, you're self-identified. But I was so thrilled, and I remember hearing on my computer, "You've got mail." That was so exciting. The reason I mention this is because the consumer experiences that we have with technology often influence the thinking when we get into our places of work. And the same thing was going on in education at this time. So it was around this time period that there were 19 governors that were looking collectively at what problems that they could solve with adult learning and education in their states. And so they got together and started thinking about how could they operate differently? What kind of a learning model could they put forward in their states that would help the adult learner leveraging this new technology of the internet? And that was kind of the birth of WGU. And so in 1999, the charter was signed with 19 governors, and hence WGU was born. And I was actually asked last night at dinner, well, is Western Governors University only for the Western states? And then, no, obviously not. We're a national organization. We've spread quite rapidly, but that is our origin and why we're called Western Governors University. Some of the things that make us different is first, and again, this is all setting up towards the problem statement we're going to talk about here in a minute. First is we're a nonprofit. We do have a mantra internally that we take very seriously that we often use in meetings, which is tuition dollars are sacred. We take that very seriously. And so every dollar that we spend, we scrutinize and we think about, is this going to affect our key results of our students achieving their outcomes? Next, obviously, we're 100% online because one of the founding principles for WGU is we want to be online anytime, anywhere, any device for our learners. Now, we are an outcomes-based university, meaning we do things that produce demonstrable benefit for our learners. And we usually translate that into marketability from a jobs perspective. And so you'll find that we have 4 colleges, 60-ish plus degrees. These are very tuned and formulated to produce results and outcomes for our students. And so we don't have a multiplicity of colleges and we don't have hundreds of degrees because we focus on the ones that are going to produce outcomes. Now, because of that, we have a very large student base. And our student base, and we're quite proud of the fact that we serve the underserved. And so we have close to 170,000 concurrently enrolled students, 74% of which represent one or more underrepresented population. And so you can see 43% are first-generation college students, 21% low income, 33% are historically underrepresented races and ethnicities, so Black, Hispanic, Indigenous, or two or more of these combined, and 29% are rural. We're fiercely proud of the fact that 15% of our student population are in the armed forces or served in the armed forces. So when you do the math on that, that's roughly 25,000 students are in the military from WGU. 25,000 concurrently enrolled students equates to a huge university by definition. So we have the equivalent of one huge university just of enrolled of military students. 80% of our students have jobs. They're working adults. So again, all this factors into the problem statement we're going to discuss. But now we'll learn a bit about Chiron.
Great. Well, so Chiron Learning, really what we're trying to do is figure out how do we use AI to really help amplify an educator? And where this has really started is, you think about your experience in K through 12 or higher education. There are those instructors and professors and teachers that really kind of you end up gravitating to. And I'm sure all of us can think of a few that have really impacted us. But it's very hard for those instructors to be able to meet the needs of every single student, and especially when you have class sizes as large as this, it's very, very tough to meet the unique needs of every student. And so how can we use the combination of educators and AI to be able to extend the art of those educators to more students? And so we're really focused on that. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So you think about those educators. This is a picture of me back in, I think I was like 11 years old in 6th grade. For me, my best educator was this guy, Mr. Robert Thomason, who was my 6th grade teacher. His creativity and his personality and humor are the things that really drew me in. I was actually a failing student in math in 4th grade, and he was the guy that turned me around. And I'm sure many of you have similar stories to that. And so what I was thinking as we started this company is that great education really starts with those great teachers, and how can we accentuate those great teachers and bring them to more people? So next slide. So what we're doing is multimodal AI lessons built with care by educators that engage each student in their unique needs. And let me break this down a little bit. There are 3 key things here. Multimodal. So what this is, it's a platform for discussion-based lessons with video, visuals, and voice. This is not a chatbot. This is something where it's a visual experience such that you can really kind of engage a student, really engage them in discussion and instruction, and then drive them towards an outcome. The second thing is it's created by educators. And so educators can create every part of this, and they can put their own creativity into it, their own videos, their own personality into it. And you'll see this in a second with one of the educators at WGU that's created this. Third is that we make it very simple to do. And so we make it such that AI is accessible to any educator, and you can build these lessons fairly rapidly. And so I'll show you a little bit about that. So next slide. There are 3 things that are really unique about this. First is that we focus on amplifying the educator and protecting the students. And so the educators control all aspects of this. The AI is only there to facilitate, to kind of lead the student from a defined question to a particular answer. And it's something that, as a result of that, is a safer form of AI than kind of an open chatbot that's out there. The second thing is it's visual and guided, and especially when you're trying to convey a concept to a student, visuals are really, really important. And so it's a visual experience, and it actually guides a student across a concept as opposed to just being able to answer questions. And the third is that we assess through discussion. And I think one of the key things we're thinking about is that assessment shouldn't just be a test that you sit down and write. You should be able to have a discussion, and then based on that discussion, glean what are the students' misconceptions? Where do they need more help? Why aren't they understanding a particular thing? And then help the instructor be able to decide what to do next. Next slide.
So this is the first pillar of the problem statement. So I'm going to recombine everything we talked about with WGU. So we're online only. One thing we didn't talk about is that we are competency-based. And we also have high levels of personalization, and we have high flexibility. So what I mean by that is we're not governed by a traditional semester or trimester model. We don't start our term on September 1st and wrap up just in time for the Christmas holidays. we have monthly matriculation. Now in that, you also have the ability as a student to progress at your pace. So you consume materials when it's available to you, or when you have the time, it's all on your schedule, and you advance per your own schedule. I won't say exactly who, but one of my colleagues in the room here just received her MBA, and she did it at a highly accelerated pace because of all the skills and competencies that she brought with her to the table. She was able to rapidly advance through her degree and progress at that pace. Now with that, we also have high levels of personalization. So the moment you enroll, we have an enrollment counselor who calls you and works with you to make sure that you get on the right path and you get through enrollment. And then when you matriculate into a program, we have a mentor that's assigned to you and works with you, and course instructors that work with you. And we're doing all this at a lowest cost possible, and we're trying to be flexible. So you put all this together and it just does not come out to scale. So the problem we have is we're starting to scale very rapidly from a student population, and we have to keep hiring tons and tons of humans to manage the expansion of our student base, and we're worried about losing that personalization at scale. The second pillar of the problem statement is, how are our instructors and our faculty reacting to this notion of artificial intelligence? We have quite a large population on staff, and so we can get a good gut pulse just from talking to them, but we also look at the open market and we kind of feel what's going on out there. And the general sentiment, as best I can describe it, is FUD. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? The media loves to play on these types of things. And so I went back and I just, over the past 3 months, grabbed a couple of headlines from the web. Will AI end education as we know it? Economists predict schools teachers could become obsolete. Will AI replace teachers? Teachers are more wary than administrators of AI. And lastly, AI threatening teachers' jobs, what you need to know tonight at 10. It's that kind of sensationalism that is permeating the market, and unfortunately creating a lot of confusion for our educators in terms of, how should we be thinking about AI? How should we be using AI? Will AI replace me? And those types of things. It all comes together in big 3 categories. So they're worried about the reduction of human interaction with their students. They're worried about data privacy and security. And of course, their own job security is coming into play. And Ed Week basically summarized it in a poll saying that almost half of educators have just a negative sentiment about AI. So this quote from an administrator I think is also very telling. AI will make it where people today are totally dependent upon it. Students need to learn how to think, solve problems, and make decisions based upon facts and not what AI says. We are dumbing down our country when we take away the skills needed to make wise decisions. So clearly this person is viewing AI as a replacement for thinking. Now, I believe that is similar to the thinking that permeated the population when the graphing calculator first came out. People viewed it as a threat. Students won't learn how to do math. This is going to do everything for them. And instead, it turned out to be a wonderful tool when used properly. The same thing applies to artificial intelligence. It's a tool that we need to help our educators understand how it can be applied. And so the central philosophy that we're adopting at WGU is human intervention with AI. We're calling it transitional AI, is kind of the way we're branding it. And the reason why is that humanity is key and central and will remain so into the educational experience. So similar to Rajan, I had a very similar experience. And for me, it actually was the 4th grade as well. I just changed schools and I didn't have friends. I didn't feel welcome. I felt bullied. And in the mornings when my mom was pushing me out the door, I didn't want to go. I didn't feel psychologically safe at school. And growing up in the 70s in Texas, you can't tell your mom, I don't feel psychologically safe at school. that didn't fly. It was get out the door. And I had a teacher named Mrs. Bond who made the world of difference to me. So across elementary school, middle school, high school, and 3 college degrees, I've had dozens of instructors. But I can only name one by name, and that's Mrs. Bond, because she made me seen. She made me feel seen. She made me feel comfortable and confident. She gave me that confidence to make friends and succeed. So I will never forget her. And that's why humanity is so key to this whole experience. And so what we're striving for at Western Governors University is the human fusion into education with artificial intelligence. We're trying to augment, not replace, the educator. And so there's a couple of different ways and aspects you can look at that. One is we want them spending the time where it's most critical in human interaction. So we're looking at how can we reduce administrative tasks, terms of content creation or basic grading and scoring and some of those things. But more importantly, the work we're doing with Chiron is a little different. We're looking at what elements of information sharing can be done in an automated way that then allows the teacher to focus with a student personally when they get stuck. So again, we're calling this transitional AI because it's a transitionary period where we're introducing our educators and our students to AI as a tool. And so now we'd like to show you a little bit more about that. Let's pivot to the video.
Hello, my name is Christopher Peters, and I'm one of the web instructors here at WGU. Have you ever used DevTools before? If so, how did you feel when you were looking through the tabs?
I've used them before, but it's been a while. There's a lot to keep track of, and I think I could use some support.
Thanks for sharing. The tabs in DevTools can be really overwhelming when you see them the first time. There are so many of them to click through, and a lot of the information in there might not seem relevant to you immediately. Hopefully with our discussion a little bit later about DevTools, you'll feel more comfortable going in there and finding, or at least looking for, the information that you want. Now let's talk about CSS animations. Animations are when images move, right? And in CSS, that would involve changing properties over a certain period of time to simulate that movement. Which property allows us to change the position of elements inside of a flexbox?
The flex basis.
You answered flex basis, which isn't right here. Flex basis was the property that adjusts the size of an element before it flexes, and then the size if the flexbox were to reset. Let's try this again and think about the property that we would use to adjust the position of an element within a flexbox. My name is Christopher Peters, and my parting advice for this course is just to stay curious. Don't be afraid to try new things, and until next time.
So Roger, you want to walk us through kind of what was happening there?
Yeah, so what you saw there was that the instructor actually had recorded kind of small snippets of video. And what we would do is when the instructor asked a question, we would listen to the student and then be able to weave in the right video at the right time to be able to address that student's needs. And so the experience for the student is that they felt like they were actually interacting with Chris and could really kind of feel his personality and his wisdom as a part of this. And there are two parts of what we do. We have kind of a more kind of branched model like this where the instructor can put in exactly what answer they want to put in at a different time. And we also have material that's generated. And so if you want to have a more open-ended discussion with the student, you can do that, and we use generative AI for that. And so what's great here is that the student feels like they're actually connected to that educator, but is also getting exactly the help that they want to get. So as opposed to just a regular video where you'll just watch it and potentially you may have issues at a particular point in time, this actually helps guide you and it helps check to see did you actually get it and guides you where you have misconceptions. So one of the things that we've also built is what we call Chiron Studio. So one of the things that we've been working with the WGU team on quite a bit is how do you build these? And we've worked with a lot of the instructors there on this. And we're now creating a tool called Chiron Studio, which we just released a couple weeks ago, that makes this really easy to do. So to create a lesson, all you have to do is enter in three things: a title, an audience, and a learning objective. And then you can hit generate draft on this. And so this lesson here is, let's say I want to teach somebody about overview of financial statements and how do you learn about financial statements. You can create this, and when you hit generate, then and go to the next slide, we automatically create a lesson for you. And so you can actually publish this lesson right away already. And we've generated kind of an instructional step with this, and then we generate a knowledge check question that's there where then we have a back and forth with the student. We can, out of this, generate a video that will kind of take the student to the next level. But what's great here is then the educator can edit this to their satisfaction. They can change any of the content that's here. They can add in instructions to help guide the AI to make it pedagogically sound with their judgment. And then in addition to that, they can be creative and put in their text, their video and their visuals as well to really make it their own experience, experience, just like what you saw Chris did in the previous demo. So if you go to the next slide, this is an example where in the bottom box you can actually guide the AI to figure out how does it respond to a student. And what's really interesting here, it's a much safer usage of AI. It's not this open-ended thing that's relying on just a model that has a bunch of general knowledge. It's relying on the educator's knowledge to help guide a student from a question to a particular answer. The next slide. So if you just hit generate, this is the kind of lesson it'll create. So it'll create a video lesson with its own slides and a voiceover narration, and then the kind of back and forth interaction that you saw there. But if you go to the next slide, an educator then can add in their own videos, and they can create an experience that looks more like this, and it was similar to what you saw with Chris, where it really then feels like you're interacting more with that educator. A key thing here is that we're not deep faking the educator. We're actually using real educator video so that it's a very authentic and genuine experience, and the educator can really kind of express their personality, their style as a part of this.
So one thing I noticed is that you had, I'm sorry, continue.
And one last thing is that a key part of this is that how do we close the loop? So how do we go from the live interaction with a real educator through to a Chiron lesson, and then back to give feedback to the educator about what should they do next with the student? And so what we can do is we can look at the conversation that we had with the student, and we can automatically identify misconceptions that that student had and deliver that back to the instructor. What that does is the instructor can look at it and say, hey, a third of my class had this misconception, or this student is really struggling with this particular thing, and they can use that to decide what to do next.
So one of the things I noticed is you had a file upload option. What type of files are instructors uploading?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I think one piece of feedback that we got from a lot of instructors and teachers is they don't want just generic lessons. They want things that dovetail with what they're teaching in the class at that point in time. So you can upload curriculum material, you can upload worksheets, videos, whatever it might be, and we'll generate things based on that dovetail with what they're teaching in class as well.
One thing that's very interesting about their approach is the humanity is centralized in a couple ways. One, obviously, the educator is in control of the information and how it's presented every step of the way. So Chiron's not just generating content and video and then putting it out to the students, but the educator has full control along the way of how that's presented, what's presented, and so forth. And from the other options that we've evaluated across the marketplace, as he was mentioning, kind of the simulation of an instructor, that seems to be a prevalent trend that I'm personally seeing, is this notion of upload a rubric. We're going to simulate an instructor, and we'll just generate questions along the way. It's not very interactive. It's not very authentic. So that's what we prefer about the Chiron solution, is that totally authentic solution that our instructors are in charge of along the way. So what we've done so far is we have run a couple of classes with this with a small sample size of students. And the first thing that we noticed is, from an engagement perspective, is the engagement around the clock. And so again, back to the problem statement for WGU, is that we are an online, always open university. And most of our student population are employed. And so they study on their time when that's most convenient. Now, we also want to be mindful and respectful of the humans that work for us. And they need to go home and have personal lives. And so after hours engagement is still critical for the student, but how do we do that in a way that allows our humans to go home and have dinner with their families and enjoy their downtime? And that's what we've experienced here. As you can see, the engagement after 5 p.m. remains fairly strong and consistent throughout the night. So obviously in the wee hours of the morning, it's not as strong, but it's there. So between 5 p.m. and 8 a.m., we're seeing enough engagement to tell us that this is a solution that is widely used across our student base. The next thing we did is we did a qualitative survey. How did people feel? We were worried about the student experience, because at WGU, the student is at the center of everything we do. We obsess over our students. And if we won't deploy something simply because it makes our lives easier, it needs to be good for our students. And so the perception is wildly positive. So 95% of the students said they had a positive experience, and 98% that it helped them learn the materials better. Interestingly, 100% asked for more of these lesson aids, which conflicts with, in my opinion, the first one. Why did 5% say they didn't have positive, but yet all of them said they want more? I don't know. But so wildly positive responses to this. And just, I won't read all these, but the qualitative, again, open text responses were very informative. Just a couple key ones to me to call out was the one that says very interactive and concise. Love how the questions were asked in a very interactive first-person kind of experience. I almost thought the tutor was actually right here asking me questions. This lesson was super helpful, and the interaction will help make sure the material sticks. I was not a fan of reading the entire Linux Essentials book, watching boring videos. This lesson kept me engaged and focused. So I think that's the key. We want to empower our students to have resources at their disposal that allow us to have that personalization at scale, that allow them to have that human connection and interaction. And when they go and have a face-to-face conversation with their instructor, it's the person they've been talking to in the video. So there's continuity there as well. So where are we going from here? So for us, our journey continues with Chiron. So now we're expanding the use of the Chiron platform to more instructors, more courses, more students, and now we're starting to measure more quantitatively the impact. So the things that I'm looking for personally, we want to see engagement with the tool. We want to make sure that as we're offering this tool, that students are picking it up and using it. And we're doing this time around, we've done an LTI integration with their platform so we can get better student data. We're also looking for completion rates. Again, it all comes down to, is this helping our students achieve their outcomes? Are they better able to engage the course materials? Are they completing at an on-time pace or a faster pace than otherwise? Are their grades as good as or better than they should be otherwise? Those types of things. So Rajan, just a couple of questions for you. That is where we're going with you. Where do you see the market going in terms of where you're taking Chiron?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really interesting about this, I've been in technology for 25 years. I've never seen evolution of technology happen more rapidly than what we're seeing right now with AI. It's 10 times the pace of what we saw with mobile or the internet. And literally every week, there's a new innovation that's coming out. And so one of the things that we're trying to become experts at is staying at the top of that innovation curve, and as a result of that, helping our customers stay at the top of that innovation curve, but by bringing in functionality that is useful. So an example of this, one area where AI is getting much better is kind of creation of images and creation of visuals. And so we just added that to our product so that we can automatically create visuals, and that helps an instructor be able to create things much more rapidly than they were before. That's going to get better and better. And so we're trying to stay at the top of that curve. I think there are probably 3 interesting areas where AI is going to evolve over the next year that are going to be beneficial to all of us here in education. One is that it's going to become a lot more accurate. There are a lot of interesting large language models out there. The accuracy, say a year ago was 60, 70%. Now it's getting into kind of the 80, 90% range, and it's getting better across subject. And so we're now starting to use different models to try to figure out where we can get better accuracy for different areas. A second is that it's going to continue to get more and more inexpensive, and so there are techniques now to make these more affordable, and I think that we're at the cutting edge of trying to figure those out, and as a result of that, help our customers. A third is multimodal, and so multimodal is, I think, going to be a big trend over the course of the next year, and it's key to what we do. We want this to be a visual experience because we're finding that as it's a visual experience, students are much more engaged with this. And so you can think about kind of where you can take this. You could generate static visuals, and that's one thing that we're starting to do. Another thing is over time, I imagine you can start to do more dynamic visuals. So based on what the instructor is saying, we create visuals that are in line with that and create it to be something that feels more engaging and can also drive conceptual understanding. And I think those are going to be things that will really accelerate our solution, but accelerate a variety of solutions in the industry.
So before I ask any more questions, respectful of time, does anyone have questions for Rajan? Any questions in general? Please.
Wondering when the instructor they put in a longer video and then somehow it gets broken up into shorter segments, or do they have to record live in just the snippets that they want to use?
It's a great question, and we've done both. We've done ones where we record kind of a longer video and then chunk it up and have like timestamps for different things. And we've also done places where they can record kind of smaller videos. And so we've been able to do both. And with Chiron Studio, we have it such that you upload a particular video for a different segment, and we can do parts of that ourselves and then recommend tools to be able to help with that too.
Up front.
In terms of tracking student progress in a larger scale, will the system be able to tell teachers, listen, that there's a general misunderstanding about a specific subject or idea or?
Absolutely. And one of the interesting things we're now able to do, and this is a new innovation in AI, is we can look at a lesson and we can generate what are the common misconceptions that we should look for. We also present that to the educator, and so they can look through that and say, like, these are misconceptions that I'm looking for, but these are other ones that I think I should also look for. And then at the end of it, we can give a report back to the educator to say, these are the misconceptions that we found. We found that these students over here had this particular issue, and that's why they're not getting this material. And half of your students had a misconception over here. That can help the educator really decide what to do. So if half their students are missing something, then they can do, it tells them they need to rethink how they present their content. If 6 students over here have a particular issue, they can do like a small group webinar or whatever it might be to really help those students as well.
And how do you fit into your own curriculum? Does it have to be in a specific platform or?
No, it's a good question. We dovetail with whatever curriculum they have. And so in that first step where you actually upload material, you can upload curriculum material and we'll create the lesson that dovetails with that. Also, the educator has all the power here. And so if they want to create something that is very specific to their curriculum in the way that they want it, they can do that from scratch as well.
Gentleman in the blue jacket.
Yeah, 2 parts to my question. I guess the first one is when you upload content as part of the generating the lesson, how much does the lesson generation take into account that content versus publicly available content? And then when you don't upload, is it just all publicly available content? And how do you ensure that the information is factual?
Yeah, very good questions. And so one, on what you're saying, we bias towards the information you upload. And so when you upload information, we try to focus on that information. And if there's things that are outside of that, if we can't find something in there, we look at things that are outside. If you just hit generate, then we're looking at what's available in the large language model. And there are 2 things I think that really help this. One is that's where the educator's review step is critical. So we'll show the educator, hey, here's what we found. Here's the instructional material that we're going to present. Here's the question. Here's the answer that we're going to drive the student to. And they can look at that and say, you know what, that is actually factually incorrect. I want them to drive to this, or edit that in whatever way that is there. The key thing is that we only use AI after that point to drive a student from a question that the educator put in to a set of answers that the educator has indicated. And as a result, the risk of hallucination is much, much lower as a result of that.
Sorry, one last part. What is the overall model trained on? Is it just general information accessible across the internet?
To start off, it is, but then I think that's also where we're working with a lot of our customers to figure out, okay, if you have something around a particular area, can we focus in on that material and fine tune on that material and things like that as well.
Hank, I have a question for you. As a school leader, how does this look when you're introducing new teachers? Like, I see how the technology works, but how does the human interact? Like, what does the teacher do? They make all these videos, they create all this, but how do you integrate the live human teacher with the technology?
That's a good question as well. And so I think first it starts with how do you pitch it and present it to the instructor, right? And so it comes down to the presentation that this is a tool. And we've been selectively introducing it into certain courses, and so it's personally introduced by the instructor to the students. It's like, here's your resource guide. Here are things that you can choose from, one of which is the Chiron Learning Platform. And so they are the ones introducing and bringing the student into the tool, introducing them to the tool. And they're the ones who the students come back to after using the tool. And so there's continuity there between the two things.
But with your online classes, where do you envision the future of your courses? Like how much will be live, synchronous interaction with the instructor and how much will be this?
It just really depends on the student. So we don't have a synchronous model today. We don't have a published class time where people dial into a Zoom video to consume a lecture. It's all the materials are online at their own pace. And so the interactions with humans happen when needed and at usually the request of the student. And so it's really the student is in control of the entire journey. Now, conversely, the instructors and mentors, coaches do reach out. Conversely, when they see that someone is off pace or they need help, that's where Chiron can also help point our instructors in the right way to reach out. This student might need your help.
In a work day, like how do you allocate time within each instructor's work day to create content as opposed to managing all the other bureaucratic and classroom?
Yeah, that's a huge issue we're working on. So it's not just this, right? There's a multiplicity of other administrative tasks that they have that consume them all the time. And that's an overarching theme of what we're working on is how do we reduce or eliminate the administrative work to help them focus on interacting with the students at the right time, at the right moment. So for example, we're working now on implementing a decision intelligence framework that's going to help them identify the right moments in time to reach out to students via prompts. The student is stuck here, needs this type of help, and those types of things. Content creation is something that is done with the Chiron Studio in a chunk. So it's not every day they're going in to create content. You know, they go in and create the content once. They block a few hours, get it done, and then it's published, and that actually then helps reduce their administrative burden over time, because then that helps the students self-enable some of the help and the learning that they need.
And do you see this model working with high school students as opposed to adult learners?
It's hard for me to say that because I don't cover high school. My theory is yes. Rajan, I know you actually have a lot of work going on in the K-12.
Exactly. Yeah, we actually have students all the way from 4th grade all the way through to 30, 40-year-olds that are using this, and we're actually seeing really strong effectiveness in K through 12. An example of this, we partnered with Saga Education to do kind of a hybrid tutoring model in high school, and so we think it can actually be effective in a lot of different places.
One more question in the back.
Yeah, just curious. I mean, obviously this is a refined and new approach to knowledge production, like a system for knowledge production. I'm curious, has that created any restructuring within WGU about the project management and standing this up and sort of ensuring success? Are you restructuring from the inside? Are you collaborating as well with other divisions to make sure that content and IT are working seamlessly to bring the solution to fruition?
Yeah, there's no restructuring at this point, and this is really, truly the tip of the sword for us, and our first kind of toe in the water in how this is going to work. We do find that there's a good demand from all of our divisions across WGU to understand how to better access and leverage type tools such as this. And so we're working on, I think the one thing we have stood up that is a bit different is we do have a centralized kind of AI forum for our senior leaders to come together and coalesce around what is the future strategy for the organization. And it's a forum for people to bring in their independent AI projects so that we're collectively looking at it. The last thing we want is to be gatekeepers for our entire organization and saying you can only use the tools that we produce for you from the EdTech division. We want to enable them via a broader framework of tools to select from and for them to bring into that they can also have some say into that as well. Well, that is it. We are at time. We thank you so much for your participation today.
Thank you all.